Hi again. In Leon Morris, Jesus is the Christ, studies in the Gospel of John and the Theology of John. We've reached the portion where he deals with two more expressions, I am sayings of Christ. I am the door, and I am the good shepherd. In the chapter in which he employs some vivid imagery about the sheep and the shepherd, Jesus twice speaks of himself as the door. That's John 10:7 and 9. The first time referring to the door of the sheep, and the second time simply to the door. The chapter has begun with a reference to a sheepfold in which the sheep find safety and to which there is access by a door. Anyone who climbs over the wall and does not use the door is up to no good. The shepherd goes in through the door in 10 verse 2, which poses a little difficulty later in the chapter, for Jesus is spoken of both as the door and as the shepherd. But this is no great problem. We are able to understand one important truth by seeing him as the shepherd who has the right to enter by the door, in contrast to thieves and robbers who climb over the wall, and quite another by seeing him as the door through which people enter salvation. When he says, I am the door, Jesus is saying that he himself is the means by which the sheep enter life. He says the door, not a door. There is something exclusive about the door. The normal sheepfold of the time had just one door, and Jesus is saying that the way into life goes through him, and him alone. He is the door. When he repeats the thought, he adds, if anyone enters through me, he will be saved, and go in and go out and find pasture. He does not explain saved, which is a concept used much more often in the Synoptic Gospels than in this one. But we should understand it of the entrance into life eternal. The concepts of being saved and of having life eternal are linked in chapter 3, verses 16 and 17, and we should understand a similar linkage here. This is further brought out with the reference to going in for security and out for food, further explained as finding pasture. Thus, once again, we encounter the thought of an exclusive salvation, exclusive in the sense that it can be entered only through the one door, Jesus Christ. If there is but one door for all the race, then once more we are reminded of something very important about Jesus. Like the other I am sayings, this one leads us to think of deity. Now I am the good shepherd. Following on from the conversation about the door, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, 10 verse 11. Since the word for good, kalos, has about it the notion of beauty as well as goodness, some suggest that we should translate it here as beautiful. For instance, E.V. Rieu, in his New Testament translation, translates this, I am the shepherd beautiful. William Temple sees this meaning and proceeds, quote, of course, this translation exaggerates, but it is important that the word for good here is one that represents not the moral rectitude of goodness, nor its austerity, but its attractiveness. We must not forget that our vocation is to so practice virtue that men are won to it. It is possible to be morally upright, repulsively. End of Temple quote. Temple's warning is one that we do well to heed, but in the present passage, the emphasis is not on the way we are morally upright, but on the attractiveness of the Good Shepherd. Whatever be the case with his followers, Jesus is the beautiful shepherd as well as the morally good shepherd. The Good Shepherd, Jesus says, lays down his life for the sheep. This is most unexpected. A shepherd was expected to live for his sheep, not to die for them. It was his task to lead them to pasture and to water, and to defend them from wild animals. Sheep are particularly vulnerable animals, though through many generations they have been bred to serve the needs of the human race. They are not much good as foragers, that is, goats are much better. Does not the shepherd's psalm say that the Lord makes me lie down in green pastures, and that he leads me beside still waters? The sheep can be trusted to find neither green pastures nor still waters. They depend on their shepherd, and sheep have no significant defense mechanism. They easily fall prey to predators. In early days, they were wild animals in Palestine, which have since died out. Thus David spoke of lions and bears attacking his flock. It is plain that the task of the shepherd was not an easy one, that it could lead the man who cared for his sheep into serious danger. But a shepherd would reckon that he could cope with the dangers. If he thought he could not, then he would not be a shepherd. He had no intention of dying simply in order to defend some sheep. He might run into danger, but he would always be of the opinion that he would come out on top. To die for the sheep must have been very rare and seen as very tragic. But that which is rare and tragic among human shepherds is characteristic of the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. This is another way in which John brings out the truth that the death of Jesus was no tragic accident, but the divinely appointed way whereby salvation would be brought to those who trust him. Sheep are helpless animals, and sinners are helpless to bring about their salvation. But the Good Shepherd lays down his life, and the sheep are saved. The second time, John reports that Jesus said, "I am the Good Shepherd," and this time adding, "I know my own, and my own know me, even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father." Then he says again, "And I lay down my life for the sheep." The feature of the life of a first century Palestinian shepherd was his knowledge of his sheep and their knowledge of him. These days, when flocks may be numbered in thousands, an individual sheep is unrecognizable. But people at that time had smaller numbers. Jesus spoke of a man with 100 sheep, Luke 15:4, while the prophet Nathan referred to the irreducible minimum for a flock, one little ewe lamb. Shepherds thus knew individual sheep, and of course the sheep would know the shepherds who provided for them. Earlier in the chapter, Jesus had spoken of sheep who knew the voice of their shepherd and would follow him, whereas they would not follow a stranger, for they did not know his voice. It is important for John that Jesus has knowledge of his own, and that his own know him. Nor should we miss the point that a second time Jesus says that the Good Shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. This is not an incidental, more or less unimportant fact, but the great central truth. The heart of the gospel is concerned with the provision that God has made for the salvation of his sheep, and this involves the death of the shepherd. Next time, I am the resurrection and the life. Put in a link here to David Barron, a Jew that converted to Christianity in the 19th century and wrote some terrific books, one of which is on the suffering servant passage of Isaiah 52:53. See you next time.